Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles and cousins, of course, and nanas and papas, or if you prefer, grandmothers and grandfathers, and baseball fans everywhere. Hello and welcome to this edition of the Valley Baseball League podcast. My name is Graham Knight, and on behalf of the Valley Baseball League and the teams in this league, it is my pleasure to welcome you here tonight to a place we call the Analytic Zone. Yeah. I know that it should read something along the lines of this. It's in the middle ground between light and shadow, between science and superstition, and it lies between the pit of man's fear and the summit of his knowledge. This is the dimension of the imagination. It is the area which we call the Twilight Zone. You know, I've taken a few liberties. Personally, I think it sounds a lot better like this. It's in the middle ground between home plate and home plate, between the math of 6 plus 4 plus 3 equals 2, and the superstition that has players everywhere not changing their underwear for the entire season. And it lies between the windup and the summit of his accomplishments. This is the dimension of the analytic, a place we call the Analytic Zone. And now it's time to start segueing into the great moments and the great players of the league. And there's no better place to start than talking with John Leonard. So I'm going to throw it to Joe Harman, who is our Valley League play-by-play announcer, with this interview with John Leonard and a first of many discussions on the All Decade Team. Joe, take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Graham. It is certainly a real pleasure to be here with Uber Valley Baseball League fan John Leonard. John, thanks for joining us again today.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure as always.
Well, just for those fans that may not be aware of what I mean by how an uber of a fan you are, back in 2006, you started the website that you still run, allthingsvalleyleague.com. Tell us about that.
Well, yeah, I realized that there was all this great baseball going on right in my backyard. And I'm an English teacher. I like to write. And so I decided to combine those two things, my love of baseball and my love of this local baseball with my love of writing, and just started doing research and posting articles on the guys that were in the league then and who had been in the league before. It started in 2006. It's hard to believe that it's almost 15 years ago now.
Wow, that's quite a hobby. And with that, you also produce yearly annuals. And you publish annual books, the highlights from each of the seasons, and your 2019 Valley Baseball League Annual is available now?
That's right. Although I only just started doing it here in 2019.
Okay.
So 19, although I did go back and do the 2015 season, if anybody would be interested in that, that's available too. 2019, that was a deliberate project that I worked on during the season of 2019. Yeah. So it's got all of the information about the games from last year, the players, the best hitters, starters, relievers. And then I do a bunch of history too. Like I do a paragraph on every single professional player that has a background from the Valley League.
Wow.
That chapter took me forever, so I make sure that I mention that one. I think that one took me several weeks to do on its own. So yeah, I love this league, and I love getting in as deep as it needs to be.
And where are you from originally?
Well, originally I'm from southeastern Pennsylvania.
Hence the Phillies jersey.
The Phillies jersey, right? This is I'm a little bit older than what I wish at the moment. So this is the old powder blue that the 1980s Phillies used to wear, like on
Mike
Sundays.
Schmidt wore that jersey.
Exactly. Yep.
And so you were mentioning about your wife you were about to tell a story there?
Oh, we just moved to the Valley to attend college back in the late 80s, and then we stayed. But of course, we've spent 13 of the last 20 years in East Africa as well. So I've been following the league from afar. And when we're back in the summers, I like to spend time watching the Valley League, of course. But we moved back for good about 10 months ago.
Wow. So, well, we're going to get into that East Africa stuff in another podcast. But more to the point, we're here today to talk about the All-Decade Team, the All-2010s, All-Decade Team of the Valley Baseball League. And again, this is a project you took on as the Sports Media Relations Director for the Valley Baseball League. That is your official title with the league, I understand. So tell me about the All Decade Team. What got you wanting to do this project?
Well, it was in December, I think, of last year. That year that we look back at so longingly, right, before 2020 started. Joe Deck actually reached out to me at one point. Joe runs the 4D Sports podcast and also the Yak Sports podcast. And he's been somebody I've gotten to know through the Valley League, and he's a good friend. And he said at one point, hey, you're going to do an all Valley League, an all decade team. And I hadn't really thought of it up to that point. And I thought, well, of course.
Of course.
Why not in 2019? Yeah. So I started my research right away. And I'm glad I did it because it ended up being one of the most viewed articles on the website, I think, of all time, until the league was canceled a couple weeks ago. And that one did a ridiculous number as well, for a bad reason.
Yeah. So the website you're talking about is that allthingsvalleyleague.com. Mm-hmm. You're the website you run and maintain, and yeah. And I just make that distinction because the valleyleaguebaseball.com is the league's official website, which also posts, you probably cross-post a lot of their information as well.
Yeah, the all-decade team is there as well. It's on both spots. Yeah.
All right, so let's start at the top here. You got the roster handy for your all-decade team. Why don't you read that down for us?
And we'll just do the first team at this point?
Yeah, you got more than one?
Well, there's a first and a second team.
Okay, let's start with the first team. Yeah,
they're both 19 players, so it can be a bit much.
All right.
The first team, the catcher is Brad Zebedis.
Brad Zebedis
from Strasburg in 2011.
All right.
The first baseman is Jimmy Yezzo, who played in Winchester in 2012.
Yezzo, is that first?
And the second baseman is Michael Wilansky, who played in Charlottesville in 2017.
Yeah, I know that name.
Yeah, he was a Division III player from Worcester.
Yeah.
He was just fantastic all summer long. The shortstop is a name that even not great baseball fans might recognize, but it's Corey Spangenberg from Winchester in 2010.
Okay.
The third baseman is Mike Garza, who played in Woodstock in 2010.
All right.
And then the outfielders, two of them more recent and then one a little older. The older one is Jordan Tarsevich, who played in Strasburg in 2013.
All right.
And then the last two MVPs, Andrew Eister from Newmarket in 2018 and Aiden Nagel from Woodstock just this past year in 2019.
Yeah.
I also picked a utility player for both teams, and that's somebody who was a hitter and a pitcher. And the utility player was pretty easy to pick overall. And this was Brandon Quaranta. He played in Strasburg in 2016 and 17. Was their starting first baseman, and then also pitched in relief for the team. Then I picked 5 starting pitchers and 5 relievers. Turns out that the pitchers were probably the hardest to pick. It almost seemed like I couldn't go wrong with some of the guys, and it was really hard to delineate between them. But I did my best, and we do need to remember that this is just one person's opinion, right? Mine. So the starting pitchers are Ricky Winters from Woodstock in 2013, Stephen Ridings from Charlestown, 2015, Zach Peak, who pitched in Strasburg in 2017, Hayden McCutcheon, who was in Charlottesville in 2015, and then Jordan DiLorenzo, who was in Front Royal in 2013.
All right.
And then the relievers.
Okay.
We've got Adam Zipko from Newmarket in 2013. He did not give up an earned run the entire summer. That was probably an easy one. Shea Maltese from Haymarket in 2012. Anthony Zimmerman from Purcellville in 2018. Reese Carolus from Aldi in 2014. And then Zach Blatt from Luray in 2010. So those were my 19 picks for the all-decade Valley League first team.
Woo. Let's give those guys a big round of applause. Congratulations.
And they all deserve it, of course.
Yeah. It opens up just listening to the names opens up a huge number of potential questions and ways we could go about dissecting this. But again, kind of let's stay broad for a second before we get into specifics. Tell us about the process, how you adjudicated the numbers and and what was your criteria.
Well, I did this totally with stats, and so for the hitters, it was all pure hitting statistics. So I don't know how well this team, if they were all together, how well they would field, but that wasn't a consideration at all. So, and that might leave out some guys. Although I think that an all defensive team would look very different, and that might be fun. Maybe I'll do that someday. Anyway, and then the pitchers, of course, that was all on ERA and WHIP, which is walks and hits per innings pitched. And then I also looked at their walks and strikeouts per 9 innings. That was all very important. So how well did the pitcher keep runs from scoring and keep runners off base? So then I went back through and started picking apart the years. And so I've been doing a top 10 or 15 or 20 of each of these categories every summer since 2007. So that was a good place for me to start. Just look to see who I thought, back in 2000, whenever, who did I think then was the best, and start with that information. The statistics with the league only goes back through 2013. So I had to pick 12 and 11 and 10 off of my old spreadsheets that I had, thank goodness. And so was able to recreate some of that. And then I just did a huge spreadsheet and just laid everything out and compared guys against each other to see who deserved to be where. So it was fun. It was a lot of work, but it was fun.
All right, baseball fans, I really hate to interrupt this conversation, but there are 3 important pieces of business I have to get to. Have to. First, please subscribe, like, and share us. Really super important to get the word out about the Valley Baseball League. We're in the top 10 of all summer collegiate base wood bat leagues. We're in the National Alliance of Collegiate Summer Wood Bat Leagues. It's a alliance of 12 leagues, including the Cape Cod League. We're one of only a few leagues sponsored by Major League Baseball. We want to let people know what's happening in the Valley, what's good about this organization, and why they want to be involved. So help us do that. Also, if you've got any questions, comments, thoughts, please share them. We'd love to hear from you. vbleague@isomermedia.com. That's vbleague@isomermedia.com. And I would be absolutely remiss if I did not pay tribute to our great sponsor, Grace Burrows. The two last years, I'm not sure if that's a sentence, but it sounds kind of cool. The 2 last years of Valley Baseball League live streams would not have happened if it were not for the contributions and support of Grace Burrows. Here's her latest book. If you haven't gotten it, support her by reaching out and getting it. It's a great read. She's a great writer. I'm happy to say I was one of her first readers. Anyway, take a look. All right, now it's time to get back to a place we call the Analytic Zone.
So, John, I gotta, you're probably in the stands every night you can be at the Valley Baseball League games. When you got thinking about this all-decade team, were there any names that you remember from watching them play on the field that you knew were going to be a part of the conversation? Who were they?
Well, sure. Although living in East Africa, sometimes I would only be here for a few weeks of the season. But yeah, there are some guys that were just no brainers. Like I mentioned, Brandon Coranta at
Yeah.
utility was such a huge bat in the Strasburg lineup for 2 years, and then was a knockout closer for them also, or reliever, not closer. And those last two, that Andrew Eister and Aiden Nagel, they were so much fun to track during those seasons. Both of them were outstanding hitters. They came with some accolades already, so they were kind of on my radar even as the season began. And then they just crushed it when they were here.
Yeah.
Uh, Both of them hit over 400, and Nagel had a huge long hitting streak. And then I was able to talk to those guys too, which was kind of fun. Both of them were super nice and friendly, and very accommodating to the media.
And did you see him on the field? Did you get, did you see, do you have any kind of memory from watching them play, like heroics on the field that stand out to you?
Heroics.
I mean,
Not
did they? Yeah.
not really. I mean, there's weird stuff that I remember, like Eister one night in Charlottesville, ripped a line drive into the corner and slipped going around first. So like he ended up going like 3 for 5 with a double and a home run anyway, but he would have had another double had he not slipped. But I'm not a scout like that, and that's why I tend to focus on the stats more than who has the most potential. So that's why the lists are looking backwards instead of looking forwards.
Yeah. So, one of the things I want to get into with this conversation around your decade team is where are they now? And, I'm sure some of these guys went pro. From the first team that you already named, how many of those guys are in the pros? Did anybody make the majors?
Yeah, well, actually, more than half of them made the pros. 10 of the 19 guys on the first team were either drafted or signed by major league organizations. 4 of them are still current right now, although with no baseball right now, it's
right. Current is as a different definition.
Right. Need to put air quotes around that maybe. But the current guys are Anthony Zimmerman, Zach Peak, Corey Spangenberg, and the fourth one just slipped away from me.
Do you know where Zimmerman is playing?
Zimmerman played in rookie ball last year with the Cincinnati Reds organization.
All right. And Peak?
Peak was drafted by the Los Angeles Angels last summer. He signed, but he did not pitch for them at all during the summer. And then in the offseason, the Baltimore Orioles traded for him. So that's actually going to be kind of interesting that Peak will be pitching his minor league baseball, maybe in towns close to Valley League teams who might get a chance to go see him.
Maybe Delmarva or even Frederick.
Or in Frederick, and I know Major League Baseball is planning on cutting some of these teams, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, Frederick was on their list of teams to cut. So was Hagerstown, but we'll see what happens with that.
Double A would be Bowie, of course, so that wouldn't be too far either.
Yeah.
Spangenberg played with the Milwaukee Brewers last year.
He actually made the field with the big club.
Yep, with the Major League team.
All right. Do you have any? Do you have a stat line handy for him?
Yeah, he played in 32 games in the major leagues in 2019. Had 102 at bats. It was almost more of a defensive replacement than really a hitter. He didn't have a starting position. He played second base, third base, shortstop, and left field for the Brewers. So he was a pretty important utility man for them. He spent most of his time in AAA. Had 424 at bats there, and actually hit over 300 with an almost 500 slugging percentage in AAA. So,
yeah, and that's his. How many years has he been in professional ball overall? What year was he drafted? Do you know?
Yes, he was drafted in the first round of the 2011 June amateur draft, and he was actually 10th overall.
Wow.
which was a pretty big deal.
It's a huge
One of the highest draft picks the Valley League has ever had. Not the highest, but one of the highest.
Yeah.
And that was out of Indian River Community College in
Okay.
Florida. He originally started at VMI, but transferred out to community college for his sophomore year.
Wow, that's great. You know, that sounds like from what you're describing, kind of a standard track that a player, you know, spends a good many years in the minors and then starts making that transition and going on the bus back and forth between AAA and the big league team. And you know, and maybe in this coming year or the year after, he's going to be a solid every day on the roster all season long.
He did have a couple years where he was with the Padres 2015 and 16 and 17. 15 and 17 in particular got quite a number of at bats in the major leagues. He's going to be 29 in 2020. He's actually not signed right now. He's
Wow.
a free agent, and I'm curious to see if he's going to pick up somewhere that they're going to need some middle infield help.
Excellent. Well, we'll have to keep an eye on him, and you know, if he's available, we'll get him on the show and see what his plans are. All right, John. So we have got a ton more to talk about with your all-decade team from the Valley Baseball League. I want to get into the minutia of how you chose this pitcher versus that pitcher, how this outfielder versus that one, you know, and all those things. So I'm going to keep your number on speed dial if you don't mind, and we're going to pick this up again for another episode. How's that sound?
Sounds fine to me.
Hey,
Anytime.
well, thank you on behalf of the Valley Baseball League and all the fans everywhere. Thank you for putting all this effort in and doing what you do. It's great to be able to have you as a resource and to put together all this great information for us and allow us to have some fun talking about it. John Leonard, the official title is Sports Media Relations Director for the Valley Baseball League, also runs the website allthingsvalleyleague.com, where you can purchase your very own personal copy of the 2019 Valley League Annual. John, all pleasure. I'm looking forward to our next conversation.
Thanks so much, Joe.
All right, see you next time. Graham, what's going on your side?
Well, what's going on my side is that wraps this episode up. I mean, how exciting is it to get a chance to not only see the Valley Baseball League teams play in the Shenandoah Valley, but to me, the real excitement is to see players like, and he's not on the all-decade team yet. Maybe he'll be in the 2020 to 2030 all-decade team. But a guy like Cody Wilson, who came into the Winchester Royals back in 2017, you could just tell there was something about Cody. Cody was drafted in 2018 by the Washington Nationals. In 2019, he played in his first spring training game. He then played some at the Hagerstown Suns. He'd probably be playing this year if their season wasn't suspended. But I mean, to me, the real excitement of this league is, you know, seeing these players come out of college. I mean, they're still college players, really get a shot at playing in front of the scouts and get a shot at making it big. And then to see people like Corey Spangenberg go on to make a name for himself, and people like Brett Gardner, who once played for the Newmarket Rebels. To me, that's a real excitement for what happens in this league. And it's so great to have people like you, Joe, and you, John, to help share it. And so that's going to wrap it up for this episode of the Valley Baseball League podcast. When we come back again, we're going to dive into the minutia, like Joe said. Until then, we wish you all perfect health, and we wish you all a speedy return to the baseball diamond. Until next time, I'm Graham Knight. On behalf of the Valley Baseball League and all the teams in this league, stay safe. We'll see you again tomorrow night.